you, everyone. I am honored to be here today at otsconf, and as somebody who, by profession and by passion, attends a lot of technical conferences, I just wanted to give a huge shout out to the organizing team for putting on such a wonderful event and bringing us all together today. So I'm going to be addressing a topic that I find to be just as problematic as my enjoyment of the music of the white kind of misogynist dude who inspired the title of this talk, actually. And I'm going to talk about the phrase that is often said in our industry, person isn't technical. So how often have you heard during your work, so-and-so is not technical, Jane is not technical, Bob is not technical? Okay, about half the hands in the room. How often have you found yourself using this phrase? Oh, I love it when I see no hands. That is so nice. Very good. One, that we still appreciate you. So I have been hearing this phrase throughout my career, actually. So for the past 15 years, I've been working in the technology industry, starting off actually working at a communications semiconductor firm, moving through the wide world of search at Google, working in IT at a university, and onto different awesomer things after that. And I have consistently heard this phrase being used about other people, and I've consistently heard it applied to me as well, which I always found kind of confusing because I didn't really know what that meant. I'm not a software developer by profession, but I also know that 20 years ago, I wrote my first program in my school's computer lab on an Apple IIe. I had access to a computer almost from birth, and you'll find out more about that later. I'm that weirdo who likes reading open source software licenses for funsies, and will happily tell you about this hilarious bug report that I read. So I kind of feel like the application of the phrase isn't technical doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't really seem to fit me as an individual. And I again, frequently hear it applied to other folks, and I don't understand it. I think my absolute favorite instance of this was, and I will omit names, Name isn't technical, he can't possibly finish this assignment, he's just a technical writer. So the first rule of you're not technical is that the word technical is in your job title. That makes a lot of sense. So again, we have this categorical understanding that certain people in our industry are not technical, and that really makes no sense to me, because in my experience, when I think of someone who isn't technical, I immediately think of this person. My mom. My mom, the Unix programmer. My mom, the Unix programmer whose profession enabled me to basically have access to a computer from birth, and also allowed me to draw some truly appalling ASCII art using VI, when I was in single digits, right? So it is from my mother that I got my love of technology. And I think of my mother and her huge amount of patience with my dad who is so technophobic that he learned how to use the automatic teller machine when I was 14 years old because I taught him to do so. Up until that point, he had always gone into the bank to withdraw cash because he wanted to talk to a human being, because that box in the wall was very scary, and he didn't know what would happen when he put his card into it, but he was quite sure it was going to be not good. I will also at some point regale you of the story of the first time my father used the ATM, but not during this talk because I love my dad and I know we're on video. Needless to say, it was quite amusing. So again, in this framework, right, the person who ends up being not technical, in my mind at least, is again my dad, right? This is somebody who has, to this day, a Nokia candy bar phone, which is never charged, so good luck calling him, because he doesn't understand why you would want a cell phone anyway. Like, this to me is what not technical means. And clearly, we lack some kind of common framework or reference for understanding what not technical is. Or, this is my favorite, because these are some of the most important people in the world to me. I was so excited when Jessica asked earlier how many of you spend time with people outside of the technology industry, and so many hands went up. These are some of my best friends. They all live in the US, and I consider them to be the ones who keep me grounded in reality because they don't work in the technology industry. These are the nice people that we create software for, in fact. And when I think of them, you know, the phrase not technical is not what I apply when I think about who they are as individuals, right? I have my friend, the veterinarian, right, who, you know, her job every day consists of healing patients who are completely unable to speak to her, to tell her what is wrong with them, and yet she has more medical training than a professional who is expected to give medical care to human beings. Or my friend, the school teacher, whose responsibility it is to teach English as a second language to refugee students whose parents have just brought them from Haiti or the Dominican Republic. And not only having the responsibility to teach these young people a new language and about a new culture, but also to navigate all of the cultural nuances that are deeply sophisticated around these people who are encountering American culture in South Florida for the very first time in their lives. And all of this while operating within a school system that is grossly underfunded and is frequently written up as one of the most corrupt bureaucracies in all of the United States. I would say that actually requires a huge amount of technical skill. And last but not least, my dear friend, the office manager, who had worked in the high-tech industry for many, many years, up until the dot-com bubble burst the last time around. We're still waiting on this time. And you know, she decided she was done working in tech. And yet, whenever I visit her at her office, she's the one who's debugging the dental software, right? She's the one who's figuring out why the voice recognition system is not working when someone is trying to say molar back right, blah, 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 and a string of other things that I don't actually understand. So I don't necessarily think of these people as being not technical, even though the very first thing that they do when they see me after giving me a hug and telling me that they love me is to immediately hand me their phone and say, "Blondie, fix my phone." And then, you know, and I'm like, not a problem. And, you know, that's when I do miraculous things for them, like install the Yahoo Mail app so you never have to visit mobile.yahoomail.com or some other atrocity that is just not how you want to get your mail. It's not that they're not technical, they're just not my kind of technical. There's many different kinds of technical. So here's my other issue with this phrase. What does "this person isn't technical" even mean? As far as I can tell, this phrase is actually completely meaningless. You know, I've had people walk up to me and at you know, various industry conferences. Has anyone ever heard of the OSCON conference? It's a huge, okay, cool, couple hands in the audience. Huge industry gathering of like 3,500 nerds or plus. Happens in Portland, Oregon every year in the US. And I will have folks who will walk up to the trade show booth that I'm hanging out in, and they will, the first words out of their mouth will be, "I'm sorry, I'm not technical, but I was wondering about deeply sophisticated product feature." So this is very confusing to me because it doesn't seem to me that these are the kinds of people, you know, if you're not technical, why would you go to this event in the first place? I don't think that there are as many masochists in the world as we are suggesting who really want to go to a huge gathering of nerds to talk about deeply sophisticated product features when they are in fact not technical. And I think that the reason that we hear from people that they are not technical, even though this really doesn't mean anything, is because somebody else has told them repeatedly that they are not technical, right? And person isn't technical has a lot of ugly relatives, right? Like not very technical, or not technical enough, or, well, they're not as technical as Joe. Just so happens that Joe is exactly like the speaker. Joe's usually some white guy who went to Stanford or Harvard or some cool elite educational institution that means that Joe is really awesome. And I'm sure Joe, we like Joe. Joe's a great guy, but certainly Joe is not the rubric by which we should all judge ourselves, especially since I made him up. So let's actually unpack this idea of what a person isn't technical actually means, right? Because again, I assert that it is meaningless. Does Does it mean that this person doesn't have a university degree in some kind of discipline like computer science or hardware engineering or mechanical engineering? Obviously it doesn't, because there are any number of people in this audience who have taught themselves to be programmers or who have taught themselves to be hardware engineers. And I don't think any of us would suggest that those people are not technical because they lack a university degree. Does it mean that they don't write software? Well, okay, again, possible. That is one possible definition, but I'm a little afraid because I'm pretty sure that most of the folks who are doing civic architecture and who are building bridges and designing our cities and making sure that the roads that we drive on are safe are probably not all software developers. And I would be very frightened to learn that these people are not technical, because when I drive over a bridge, I want it to stay standing. I suggest that you've all probably are in the same boat with me there too. Does this mean that people who are not technical are people who cannot assemble a computer from scratch? This one was my favorite. Years and years ago, when I was at Google in the early days, there was a big row because people were very upset because they changed the hiring bar, and now you didn't have to be handed a pile of off-the-shelf components and build your own computer. And they were starting to hire people who were not really technical. So again, this phrase is meaningless. It just doesn't actually make any sense, right? It can be applied to anyone who we have decided has not fit into an arbitrary rubric that we have decided upon, and that for whatever reason we don't feel like we have to communicate. And even more sadly, it implies this kind of immutable binary, right? This person is not technical. This person is not blue. This person is not a Smurf. This person is not dressed in a dinosaur costume. The dinosaur costume is still there. Yes, all right. So, and we obviously know that this is not true. If the idea of being a technologist is somebody who is hands-on in their discipline, who creates software, who creates hardware, who likes to solder chips on breadboards, whatever, that is not something that is not changeable. There is not a single one of us in this room who was born knowing how to program. Not a single one of us emerged into the world, keyboard in hand, and said, I am here, sprung full from the head of Zeus, knowing all of the things. This just never happened. And yet when we use this phrase, so-and-so is not technical, we've just simply decided that they are never going to be someone who we find to be capable of doing things that we have not defined, things that we are not going to define, but you just can't do it. And I assert to you, ladies and gentlemen, that this phrase is really toxic. I think that it is one of those phrases that we should just eliminate from our lexicon as folks who work in the technology industry. In fact, just period. We've taught ourselves to start saying, well, I should say I've taught myself, I do not want to make assumptions about folks in the audience, but I've taught myself to not say things like, this code is lame, because lame is an ableist slur and does not show respect for people who are differently abled than me. Now I say this code is not groovy, or ungroovy in my best Austin Powers voice, which is not very good, but I try. Because it's toxic to say this code is lame. And I would suggest that we can make the same move with this person is not technical. Why can't we be specific? This person doesn't program in JavaScript. This person has never used a soldering iron. This person is not going to be able to, write a new feature X in 2 weeks, which is how quickly we need it done. All of these things are acceptable, right? These imply a certain degree of specificity. They require a certain degree of actually understanding the skills, talents, and abilities of everyone with whom we collaborate on our projects. And I suggest that this phrase is toxic, this phrase, person is not technical, is toxic because it's meaningless. It's actually code for some really ugly things. It's code for, I don't have to think about what you're actually capable of and what you're actually good at. I can simply dismiss you as not technical, as not worthy. I don't actually have to spend time and energy to educate you or to empower you or to make sure that you can be more successful because you are not technical. You are not worthy. And very sadly, I think that this is frequently code for this person is a member of an underrepresented group in the technology industry. I don't know how often I have heard the phrase, so-and-so is not technical, applied to people who program in their spare time but happen to work in the marketing department. To people who have way more nerd cred than I will ever have, who have built their own blacksmithing forge. This is going to be totally silly. Do you guys have the Society for Creative Anachronism here where people dress up in the fancy costumes from like the medieval era? Yeah, okay, cool. All right, I'm not totally out of nerd left field here. So, these people are way nerdier than I am. But again, we are applying this label to people because they don't fit in, right? It's code for you don't fit in, you don't fit my definition of someone who belongs here. You are not enough like me for me to accept you. And this is very, very sad because it stops us from having a great deal of success. And we can have colleagues who are better educated and more empowered because we've taken the time to educate and empower them. We have not said, you cannot do this thing to them over and over and over until they believe it. It's the difference between saying this person cannot program and this person hasn't learned to write JavaScript yet. It's the difference between encouraging someone's future success and creating more assets effectively for our organizations, be they open source projects or our companies, because we've helped people to be better and obtain new skills instead of just completely shutting them down and saying, this is not for you. You will never have these things. And frankly, I think that what we're doing is we're creating and perpetuating this cycle of burnout and imposter syndrome. When we consistently tell people that they are not technical, they're not good enough, they do not have the skills that are required to be successful. You are not enough like me to belong here. So in closing, I would love to cite a wonderful community human by the name of Kara Souls. Actually, a couple of people in the audience actually know Kara. Love Kara. If you ever get the opportunity to attend any of Puppet Labs' events, please seek out Kara. She is a wonderful human being. She's written a lot of really cool stuff also about the role of alcohol at tech events. There is a link here, so if you want to read it later, you can. So when I originally tweeted that I was going to be presenting on this topic, Kara immediately got in touch with me and said, oh, I want to talk about this. I'm like, okay, cool. So we met up, and she and I were just sort of exchanging pleasantries around it and a sense of frustration. And the thing that she said that stuck with me so profoundly was, I am not able to get a raise or a promotion or to get more responsibilities in my job because I am classified as not technical. That's literally what it says when you look at the matrix of employees for my human resources department. I am non-technical level such and such. And that means I make this money and I'm allowed to do these things. And she said, why on earth would I ever choose to spend my time in a job in an industry that defines me solely by what I cannot do instead of everything that I am actually capable of doing? And that's a really great question because smart, capable people who are consistently told that the only thing that matters is this one thing that they cannot do, they'll leave us. Why would they spend their time here? There are bigger and better and more beautiful things elsewhere, and frankly, the technology industry needs all of the help it can get to make beautiful things, to make better things, and to make our world a more accessible and useful place. So thank you all for coming. This is Scared Finger Questions Guy. If you have any questions, I would be happy to take them. Otherwise, I can also sing little songs or dance, as you wish. Or we can eat. Is there more cake? There's definitely fruit. We can eat fruit. Thank you.